Right, welcome to Clubmen 1645, and today we're heading into Wiltshire and we're going to go to Wardour Castle. And we're going to go to Wardour Castle and talk about the Clubmen Thomas Bennett, an elderly gentleman who was pulled before the committee in 1646 for being associated with club business. So we'll talk more about him when we get to Wardour Castle. Well, here we are at Wardour Castle. Now in 1643 Wardour Castle was being besieged by the Parliamentarians under the command of Hungerford, and Lady Arundel was in the castle. I think she had 25 men altogether, so it was easily taken over at the time. And Edmund Ludlow from the Parliamentarian side was put in there as governor. But we're not here today to talk about the siege of Wardour Castle. We're here today to talk about Thomas Bennett. Now Thomas Bennett was a man of consequence in this area because he owned large tracts of land in this area, and he was known as the middling sort. Now they hated the middling sort, and he was a typical example of the middling sort. He wasn't for Parliament and he wasn't for King, but he ended up being for Parliament sort of by default really, because he ended up having to pay money, and he was paying money to General Ludlow, and General Ludlow received £44, and I think the garrison here at Wardour Castle received £100. But Thomas Bennett was also arrested in Shaftesbury in the Clubmen there in 1645 on August the 3rd. So he ended up being the middling sort, but he ended up being involved with the Clubmen later on. His son was a Cavalier, and he was 18 years old, and he fought with the Cavaliers. But Thomas Bennett was obviously an elderly gentleman and didn't want to get involved, so he ended up going to club meetings in the area. But this came back to haunt him later on because he was pulled before the Wiltshire Committee, and they accused him of, wait for it, he was dragged there by menace by the country people. Yes, and he had been forced to show himself at club meetings. Not good. And on July the 9th in 1646 he was fined £2,000 for having borne arms with the clubmen.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It'd be worth a lot of money now. But what I wanted to point out was like the middling sort. So I've emphasised he was a classic example of the middling sort being dragged into the Civil War, and he thought his best way about it was to be with the clubmen because they were sort of like trying to keep the peace in the area. But even that come back to bite him on the yes later on. So there you go, the middling sort. Check out the Clubmen 1645 website, work in progress. We're at Pitt House, and this is the home of Thomas Bennett, where we've just talked about at Wardour Castle. So if you pan round, you can see Pitt House. I don't know if this is the original house, but it was Thomas Bennett of Pitt House, and that is called Pitt House. So we'll say that's where he lived. Okay.
You can just about see it through the trees.
Just about see it.
Lovely
nice
parkland.
Yeah, it is. But there you go, Thomas Bennett, Pitt House.